Hey, it's Nick. We got a good episode this week. I launched a new sofa collection, so excited to talk about that. James also talks about some coffee news, and we got some legit juicy design news this week. Our topic of the week is we rank the design of video game consoles from the classics all the way to modern day. It's a long one. We got a little carried away, but I think you all will enjoy it. As always, you can email us questions at minordetailspodcast@gmail.com. I believe we're going to compile all the questions and do a question episode, so make sure you send it in if you want to be in that episode. Also, you guys know the deal. Give us those 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, like and subscribe on YouTube. Leave a comment on YouTube too. Tell us how we did, and share with a friend. Word of mouth. And as always, let's hear that amazing intro by KYOSHY the Kid. Hey, welcome to Minor Details. I'm Nick.
And I'm James.
And we're two designers in the big city.
Sweating the small stuff.
Oh, man, James.
Hey.
You're not going to be in the big city anymore.
No, I'm not going to be in the big sweaty. Sweaty. I'm not going to be in the big sweaty anymore. I'm going to move into the Sweatsburgs.
Oh, man.
To the suburbs.
I mean.
Of Philadelphia, though.
You'll be close to a big city.
Yeah. I'll be sweating larger stuff, honestly.
Yeah, you're doing big boy things in your life. looking for houses and
yeah, trying to adult, doing that adult thing.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm becoming an adult today too.
Yeah? How's that?
Big 3-0, man.
Oh my gosh. Happy birthday, Nicholas.
Over the hill. That's what I like to say.
Not the car you drive.
Listen, I think if you just imagine yourself going at 60, then every year after 60 is like a nice little surprise.
If you imagine yourself going at 60?
Yeah, no, sorry.
Like
passing away.
Like dying at 60. You imagine yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I was
you envision yourself dying at 60?
I mean, I don't know.
Being swallowed by a sofa of your own making? Have there been any famous designers who have died at the hands of their own products?
Oh, that's a good question.
I don't know.
I mean, there really just hasn't been. I feel like there's just not enough famous designers for any freak accidents to happen. You know, they all just pass away in their sleep.
Yeah. I'm sure there's like inventors and
that's what I'm thinking. Like scientists or inventors, where they'll take some drug or like get electrocuted or something.
Yeah. But no, you could be the first, Nick.
I could be the first. How should I go? Just like on the table,
strapped down,
strapped. Get one of the ratchet straps
fully strapped
around my legs, and then the moving truck just runs away with me, just dragging me behind.
Drawn and quartered. Jeez, Nick. All right, maybe not so. Yeah, but that's exciting. How do you feel? How do you feel as a 30-year-old?
New decade, man.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, man. I mean, it's always fun to like take a look back and see how far you've come. Mm-hmm. I think I saw this quote somewhere that's like, remember that there was a kid that wanted what you have right now so much. And I think that applies to almost any stage of life. It's like, make sure you're grateful for what you have right now.
Yeah.
And take it in. So, yeah, it's a good reflective day.
Yeah. And you also birthed
a sofa.
A sofa baby.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that.
Super excited. Launched the Days collection, which I do want to kind of just talk about a little bit because it's my first production furniture line.
Yeah.
I think it was a couple years ago, was at Milan Design Week, and I had some friends who lived in Poland, so I was meeting up with them and met a new friend, Wojtek. And I would try to pronounce Wojtek's full name, but it's a tough one, so I'll just leave it at Wojtek because I know that one. And Wojtek is a Polish designer of Sedno Studio, and he was working with this company called Claire, and Claire is a pretty big furniture brand in Poland, which, when he told me about it, I wasn't really familiar with it, but as I researched it more and kind of learned about it, it's like pretty much the top brand in Poland, or one of the top brands. So everyone in Poland knows about Claire, and he was doing, he was kind of art directing a full line of products for them, and a lot of their products were more classic styled, more traditional styled, and so Claire wanted to kind of bring in some fresh blood, bring in some young designers, bring in some new modern aesthetics into their company. And so Wojtek was the lead on that and asked me to submit a collection. And of course, I was pumped. I was like, of course, I'd love to submit something. And at the time, I was actually traveling. I believe this was during my sabbatical. Even though I wasn't supposed to be working, I was still thinking about design. Obviously thinking what would make the perfect sofa. And of course, I just was like, I want to feel like laying on clouds. And was sketching out different ideas. And I did have some other concepts that I pitched, but the cloud concept was my personal favorite, and then also the one they picked, which is always nice.
Nice.
And so the idea was, I imagined this big kind of fabric balloon, this big kind of puffy organic shape floating away, and then the metal legs of the sofa come down and kind of press down onto this big balloon fabric thing, and it kind of wraps around the leg, and you get this perfect kind of angle of those two cushions meeting the bottom and the side, and then the metal leg kind of holding it and anchoring it down to the ground.
Nice.
So that was that very kind of playful detail that I wanted to add to the line. Of course, it's it's a very simple kind of clean modern look, and it's a very kind of archetypical sofa. But when you want to do something that's much more mass or consumer friendly, you have to tone it down a little bit, make sure it's not too crazy. But I think I struck a really good balance of it being playful enough with that little leg detail, and also simple enough that it's a really inviting collection.
That's awesome.
So yeah, I don't know, I'm really proud of it. They launched it last September, so it's been out and been selling for several months, but I wanted to really give it its due, and so I worked with Derek Elliott on the rendering and animation.
The render king.
And
the animation king. I'm
sure maybe the listeners have seen it yet, but we'll put it up here and watch it right quick. Ooh, yeah, that part's good. Chef's kiss.
Molto bene. That is very nice. I mean, it captures the story that you just told perfectly. I love in design when elements of the design are reacting and responding to each other. And so that leg detail where it feels like it's, grabbing and sort of pulling. I love that detail.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I mean, it was definitely, I think, Derek and I worked on this animation for quite a while, several months, just getting it perfect. So yeah, I mean, big shout out to him, because I know I was, we definitely worked on it a lot, and there was a lot of back and forth, and I was, the client in this scenario being really difficult, but Derek definitely nailed it. And he did all the still renders too, which are beautiful, seeing all the fabric fuzz and everything. And yeah, I mean, it's just I don't know. I'm super proud of how it turned out. And also shout out to Aaron Kalupa, did the sound, got to have great sound on a video. So
that's
important.
like, that's your thing.
That's my thing.
Then Derek took that to heart.
The other thing I was going to say, I think someone had asked me about the inspiration. Did the inspiration come first, or the story, or the design come first? Which I think is interesting, and it kind of goes back to some of our past episodes where we were talking about.
It's just our last episode, wasn't it?
Right, I think
we
so.
were talking about that.
Kind of like back sketching and that kind of vibe of like, do you go back and you change the story to fit the design? With this one specifically, I mean, I was traveling at the time. The other fun fact about this one is I did it all in VR. So I just had my Quest headset in Copenhagen, and I just like whipped up a few concepts. Never even touched SolidWorks with this project.
Nice.
Which is, a testament to VR becoming pretty powerful. But yeah, I think it was kind of a dual inception thing. I think like in VR, you're playing with these organic forms and you're squishing them and you're pushing them together. And there was this kind of folding motion that I had. And then as it folded, it kind of created this crease, which created this perfect moment for the leg, which kind of inspired the story. And then you can kind of build off of that. I think originally, so if you look on Claire's website, you can see the sofa, photos of the sofa. So this is actual photos, not renders. And we made it red. I wanted something bold, especially just kind of launching it. And the red also had a story of kind of a hot air balloon, kind of this red balloon in the sky. And so Derek and I played with that a little bit of, should we go with the balloon story or should we go with the cloud story? And so, after thinking about it, I was like, well, I think maybe the cloud has a bit more like soft, like, I don't know, invitingness to it. The red's very bold, but
there's also a certain angle to it, especially when I see the red one where it almost looks like a heart, like, or just like where the two cushions are coming together, it kind of like creates that heart shape. So I think that's like also just a nice little thing. Happy accident, perhaps.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's really cool.
And I also visited the Claire factory. I guess it's a little more than a year ago now. I think it was in January in Poland, which I can't remember if we talked about on the pod or not. I don't even know if we were doing the pod at that time. But
are they bankrolling your Greenpoint studio, being that
they're the Polish company is out here giving me
the Polish the traditionally Polish neighborhood of Greenpoint?
I wish. You know what was funny is we were in. I forget the name. The problem with Polish city names is just all Polish
Warsaw.
names. Yeah,
that's the only one I know.
Warsaw and then Krakow.
Oh yeah,
which are pronounced Warszawa and Krakow, but the city we were in was neither of those. It was actually a coal mining town. The funny thing that was interesting about Poland to me was, I think I've already talked about this, but it kind of reminded me of Kentucky.
Huh.
I think it was just all the coal.
Okay.
Kentucky has a lot of coal, and it just kind of reminded me of that.
It wasn't the fried chicken.
No, I mean, I can't remember if they had fried chicken or not. I'm sure they did. Every place has fried chicken. There was a bar in Poland called Greenpoint.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Inspired by Greenpoint, Brooklyn.
Interesting.
So I thought that was a funny little.
Did everybody have handlebar mustaches? And
No.
That's a bit passé in Brooklyn nowadays, but
yeah, no more hipsters.
They all moved to Dime Square.
I guess so.
But that's awesome. Lots of cool news. Lots of cool design news for Nick Baker on your 30th.
It's been a busy couple of weeks for sure. But great couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I guess it's fun to launch it on my birthday, 30th birthday, to like kind of solidify that statement of, hey, I'm here now. Like this is a big thing.
Yeah.
Turning a decade, kind of reaching a point in my career where I'm very pleased with it so far. So
it's awesome.
Excited about it. And shout out to everyone that worked on it, Wojtek, the whole Claire team. I mean, they have a beautiful prototyping lab, some very talented, prototyping people there that crafted a bunch of the prototypes that we looked at. and of course they have a full factory of people working. So
cool. What kind of a run will it have? Like how many pieces will they make?
There's a modular system. So there's a corner, there's a L piece, or not an L piece, but a side piece. And then there is a not modular sofa and a not modular chair and a not modular arm or ottoman. So what is that? 5 pieces?
Mm-hmm.
So
Nice.
yeah, I think I could look at the thing again, but there's actually two some of this too. This is part of the interesting part of the design process is I created the concept in Gravity Sketch and I refined it a little bit after they selected it and kind of tweaked some of the dimensions and, worked with them on how it would actually, a lot of the difficulty was getting that very bulbous shape. It's a very difficult thing to achieve with fabric because fabric kind of just wants to fold and crease. So we had to add these seams on the corners, which you can kind of see, but they did a great job of kind of hiding it and really sculpting the chair. I mean, very impressive work.
Yeah. And Claire is Kler.
Right. It's
for
not
anybody listening. It's not Claire's down at the mall.
Yeah.
You can get an earring and you can get Nick's sofa.
Oh yeah. Yeah. See, everything, all the names in Poland are, if you imagine how they're spelled completely opposite. That's how that's how it works. But I had just sent over the final Gravity Sketch design. I think I had only done the sofa and the armchair. Maybe I did an L version, but they took it and ran. They did a great job kind of coming up with the corner piece. I didn't really do much of the kind of technical work on it, so I was really just kind of the visionary side of things. So yeah, super pumped about it. But yeah, I'm excited. I don't know. I just wanted to talk about that. I know I'm kind of rambling on about it, but it's like a big thing for me.
Yeah.
So
it's worth rambling about.
What else we got here? James, you got some coffee news?
Oh, I got coffee news. Fellow just released a new grinder.
Okay.
So I currently have their Ode grinder, which is like their flagship automatic grinder. It's the Ode grinder is specifically for like pour over to AeroPress grind size.
Okay.
So it does it
have a burr grinder or is it a blade?
I think it's like called like a flat grinder.
Oh, interesting.
It's not quite, I don't know. I mean, I'm like, I should definitely do more research before I start talking about this stuff. But it's
people gonna look it up.
Yeah.
I mean, it's obviously a beautiful grinder. It's like this very like rectilinear modern.
Yeah. But anyway, so this was like the grinder, for a while, and obviously like beautifully designed grinder, very sort of like brutalist in a way.
Yeah, it's that square. It's almost got a Teenage Engineering vibe to it.
Yeah, and it's this big cantilever. And I'm pretty sure it was done by, I think, Branch.
Okay.
I think they do most of Fellow's design work. And from what I understand of Branch and their process, like they are very, very focused on sort of like the silhouette and like sort of the orthos of their products.
Interesting.
Like they work. This is what I understand of like third hand people who have worked with Branch. Is that they do a lot of like sort of like orthographic drawing, and they're like really looking for that sort of like iconic silhouette. And I think that they've like succeeded. If you look at it's Branch Creative on Instagram, I think that they've succeeded with a lot of the Fellow products. Obviously, like the kettle,
right?
Is
Kettle's definitely iconic.
Is
for
super
sure.
iconic. I think the grinder, the Ode grinder, is super iconic as well. Like they have this image on their page. Like I think
it's a literal silhouette. It's a black and white.
Yeah, I don't know if this is
Illustrator.
I don't know if
silhouette.
this is like their, if this is an artifact of the process, but this is just what I understand of like the way that they work. And so
wait, where's Branch located?
They're in San Francisco.
Okay.
But yeah, they've done a lot of work for Doris Dev. They've done a bunch of work for obviously Fellow.
Mm-hmm.
So recently, Fellow just came out with a new grinder, which it's called. Wait, the name just came up, and I have it here. Come on, Fellow. This is
Gen 2?
This is great.
Is this
Great
called Gen 2?
radio.
Okay.
This is it's the Opus.
Oh, interesting.
And so Opus is a grinder that is capable of espresso grind, as well as I think pour over and everything. And again, it goes for like very brutalist, like iconic. I mean, you look at it and there's just like so much of it that's sort of like you have
Very primitive
you have
shapes.
alignment. You've got like there's this sort of column in the back, this sort of like squared off rectilinear column that runs right into like the grinder area,
Mm-hmm.
which is a cylinder, but like where the top of that column ends is where like the transparency begins for the cylinder. I think the like the catch cup is the same width as that column in the back. Like there's just like a lot of really beautiful relationships there. But yeah, I think it's a sub $200 grinder, which is, you know, pretty remarkable. Like there's actually, it is interesting right now. There is, I would say, this sort of like coffee war. You know, there's just like all these different companies.
What's the coffee war? James? I need to know this. I need to know the niche coffee war.
No, I mean, I don't know. Like, this is just like I am so just like tip of the iceberg.
Right.
But also there's a company called Time More who just released a grinder on Kickstarter. And like they're known for their like hand grinders, for their like manual grinders. And it's interesting because their grinder that they just released, I feel like is very Fellow-ish, and not quite as successful. Like there's some nice things going on there, but then like there's something about the base of this grinder that really bothers me.
Yeah.
There's like, I feel like there's always this thing with like coffee machines and coffee aesthetics. Like they're never quite right or something. Like I feel like Fellow kind of gets the closest.
Yeah.
And Breville, you know, Breville is like that very
appliance-y.
industrial design appliance-y. Fellow is a little bit more, I don't know.
Like New Age brawn or something.
Yeah.
That's what I wanna call it.
Just like this like brutalist sort of vibe.
Primitive shapes.
And so there's a couple companies, Time More. There's a small company called Niche that has a grinder that's like, it's got its own character, much more character driven. And then, but like, I think it overuses wood as an accent in it.
I don't want to. I just look at this.
It's very Italian. To me.
Very Italian. It kind of reminds me of like a 2001 design. Hopefully that's not an insult, but it's just I feel like I could see this like walking into. It just reminds me of. I almost want to say like walking into school and seeing a design that someone had done for their capstone project in like the showcase.
Yeah.
It's very swooshy. There's a lot of swooshes going on for this niche, the Niche Zero or the Niche coffee grinder.
Yeah. So I don't know. There's just like there's tons of grinders entering the market.
Interesting.
Like this again, like my history on coffee is very recent. So I don't know if this was always the case, but it does feel like there's a lot more niche. Like there's a lot more of these small companies that are coming out with, you know, with grinders, with also like all this like manual espresso makers, like the like sort of like hand
with the press.
Yeah, the press. But yeah, I don't know. I think Fellow is they're the kind of teenage engineering, like Apple of the coffee world, and it is exciting when they come out with something new. And yeah, it's just like,
it's nice design. It's very simple.
Yeah, it's simple
but well executed.
I think it's like, you know, fairly iconic. It's interesting that they started out. I don't know what came first, because if originally their first kettle I think was just stovetop, and then they came out with the electric kettle, but all of them are just like these perfectly like rectilinear bases. And it's almost a like, to me it feels very much in mind of like, okay, your interior space, your countertop, like organizing all of your fellow products, all your coffee products,
Like
getting
Lego
them
pieces, yeah.
just so knolled perfectly. But yeah, so I saw that, and I had just gotten an ode, because like I've been doing a lot of air pressing, but I would like to get into like espresso fairly soon, and I was just like, well, now I gotta sell my ode grinder or something and get this one.
Are you gonna get a new espresso machine too?
Yeah, we don't have an espresso machine at the moment, but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, it'd be cool I think if Ode made an espresso machine,
or Fellow
made an espresso machine, it would be beautiful.
It seems like that might be the next,
because they're making a
step.
grinder for espresso.
Yeah. But it's hard to say, because it also feels like they are providing premium accessories to like established ways of coffee making. Like they're not necessarily, although they do have their own French press, they have their own pour over.
I think they got to do one. They got it.
Yeah. I mean, it feels like the inevitable next step.
Yeah. For sure.
And so like, yeah, I'm going to like end up buying an espresso machine, and then they're going to come out with their beautiful Brutalist espresso machine, and I'm going to like throw my espresso machine against the wall. But yeah, so just like, I don't know, just a company that's doing really beautiful design work, and in like an area, it does feel like coffee in recent years has become this like, this more widely adopted hobby of like
hobby. That's what I would say,
of like artisanal coffee making.
Right. It's like not even a food anymore. It's just a hobby now. Yeah. I mean, I really enjoy making my espresso in the morning too.
Yeah. So anyway,
we got some other design news, James.
Yes.
And I don't know how much we can really go into it. I don't really know all the details, but this is like actual design news. This is like actual journalism news, like this is like, how deep
are you in? How deep are you in here?
I am not deep at all, but I do I obviously like follow this company closely, and so have been reading about it. But I think we've probably talked about it before, but there's this company called Dim's Home.
Okay.
Which is a furniture company. I guess they kind of branded themselves as New Century Modern. So they had kind of a very modern aesthetic with like a mid-century flair that they called New Century Modern. And they worked with a lot of cool designers, like, Visibility Studio when they were around, and Stinney for the Clio chair. They did a bunch of really kind of cool, trendy pieces, and I was a big fan of their work. And over the past 2 years or so, they've kind of gone more quiet. There was like a break period where they stopped posting on social media. And just recently, this past month, they posted on Instagram, it just says, Dim's is dead. And then they say, but also the Clio chair has been revived with a new brand, which was like surprising to me. I was like, oh, what kind of brand just posts that their brand is dead? It's like very interesting. And then I think maybe like a day later, they posted an Instagram post that was like, oh, and I also noticed maybe last month, I like tried to go to their website was gone. Not even that, it didn't even like redirect to anything. It just like 404 website not found.
Just went dim.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so this post that they posted the other day says, "Hey everyone, as most of you know, Dim's went the way of the dodo. This is sad and confusing and generally heartbreaking, especially for those who had your money stolen by he who shall not be named. If you have questions or concerns,
Voldemort,
or want to learn more, please reach out to I'm not going to say this person's name, but redacted. And then they also say there's still some tables available if you want to purchase tables. This message will self-destruct in 24 hours. So that went to social media, which, you know, you can never just self-destruct on social media. But it is interesting because I also noticed maybe 2 years ago, Dims did a crowdfunding round where they raised a bunch of money. They raised, I want to say, $500,000. And I remember specifically looking at this crowdfunding campaign because I was like, oh, I love this brand. Maybe I should invest something. And this is on Republic, which is like a crowdfunding site. You know, I read through it. There's a lot of, you know, interesting kind of tidbits about how they work and stuff. But there was something off, and I was like, I don't know. I don't think this is the right investment to make. You know, no, I'm not giving financial advice here, but
well, it's too late anyway.
It's too late. But yeah, I mean, I obviously understand making a business with physical things is very difficult, way more difficult than doing stuff with software. So you need to be much more diligent around investing in a physical company. But it was interesting. I mean, I don't know, you can kind of the crowdfunding campaign's still up on the site. I encourage everyone to just go read through it and kind of just be interested in the economics of it. But yeah, I don't know the full story. I did reach out to the person that had their name redacted. You know, not too many details there other than apparently the CEO just fled the country because they couldn't pay their debts or something.
Oh my gosh.
So
wow.
That's the alleged rumor. None of that's you know, to be taken with factual knowledge, but it's a interesting story. I don't want to get in trouble. That's all I'm saying.
I just love how like just we provide like hazy details. Like this podcast should be called Hazy Details.
Hazy details.
We're like, I don't know what kind of grinder's in there. It's something. Check out those cylinders.
We should leave journalism up to the real journalists, I guess.
Yeah. But it's very sad because, yeah, I saw Dims as being like a very cool, very interesting new furniture brand. You know, like it seemed to be all about optimizing. Like it was almost from what I remember, it was almost something about like optimized for shipment and like designer furniture.
Yeah, I think
almost like an IKEA, but direct to consumer.
I think a big part of their mission was cutting out this middleman, which is a whole other conversation of direct to consumer realizing actually we do need physical stores and physical sales and distributors and this whole ecosystem that's, you know, brick and mortar that's been around for a while.
Yeah.
You know, Dims was kind of this idea of, hey, direct to consumer, we'll cut out the middleman, we'll give you the savings on the prices. So
right.
Yeah, I know it's a sad thing. It's like it's also a weird thing how they went, just kind of this radio silence, and then their socials getting co-opted by the employees that, you know, the CEO just not being able to control it. I don't know. It's a really interesting scenario, but
yeah,
I know we'll see if any other things pan out from it. But
yeah, what's the brand because I did notice the first thing that sort of alerted me to this was that I saw the Clio chair being produced by another brand, and I was like, wait, what? Like, what happened to Dims?
I think it's called like Edit or something.
Edit?
Let me look it up right quick. Edits? Is that the brand? Edits?
So is
Design.
Is this a new brand started by the ex-Dims people?
I believe this is an existing brand because they have a few other pieces, but the Edits must have picked up the Clio chair. It is interesting to see where all the other pieces are going to go.
Yeah.
You know, I asked the connection, like, what's going to happen with all the other designs. I don't think I got a straight answer, but it does seem interesting that's like the company DIMS dissolved and now the design can just get produced by another company without the CEO being around. I don't know. It seems like a very haphazard kind of way to go, but
Yeah.
but I'm glad the designers obviously can get their designs still made by other companies.
Yeah, totally.
But yeah, there's your real design news with hazy details. Oh man.
Oh my gosh.
All right, James. What we got a fun topic of the week.
Yeah.
You've been waiting for this one.
I have been waiting for this one.
Lay the law down.
This is not something that like, you know, this is something that I've thought about for a very long time. Even sort of like, oh gosh, maybe like 9 or 8 years ago. I just have this fascination. Like, I feel like maybe we both grew up in sort of a time where, you know, you had, I mean, I guess you still have okay, let me set this up a little bit better.
We're talking about game consoles.
Hazy details. We are talking here about game consoles. I feel like we both grew up during the like console war time.
Right.
I feel like the
PlayStation versus Xbox versus
Nintendo
third place always.
Well,
we can get into it.
Is it though? I think like after becoming an industrial designer, I sort of like started to look back at some of these artifacts of like these gaming systems and just was very like curious about you know, their sort of like distinct design languages, like how did they determine all these shapes? I mean, I haven't, again, hazy details. I haven't really necessarily researched like, and I don't know that there's even a lot out there to know about why they did certain things aesthetically, right, or whatever they did ergonomically with the controllers. But it's just like, I feel like it's a great territory to just kind of look back at all the video game consoles. At least maybe we can start with like, we could start with NES, because you can even go before that. And there's some wild game consoles from before the NES. But like, I feel like that was the first, other than I guess Atari is like sort of known as like one of the first mass adopted ones. But I feel like NES was like really ubiquitous.
Yeah, I think, well, yeah, I mean, definitely going back too far, I feel like my first console was PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
So I don't really remember the NES. I think my neighbor may had one, or maybe they had a Super NES.
Okay.
Super NES.
Super NES. Well, no, that would have been the Super Nintendo.
Super Nintendo. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So let's. So, I mean, I think like, so what I want to do here is just talk about the different consoles. I think from the NES on.
Okay.
And just talk about their design and like rate the design.
S tier versus F tier. Okay.
Yeah, and maybe in post production I'll like post our tier list.
Okay,
afterward.
Don't give yourself too much work there, Jim. That sounds like a lot.
No, I'll just like post a screenshot of like where everything fell in the end. But yeah, I remember like when I was in design school, I remember going home and grabbing the NES and grabbing the NES controller and bringing that back to school with me and being like. It's the NES controller is especially weird.
It's a rectangle.
It's a total rectangle, sharp edges. Like there's nothing like plainly ergonomic about it at all. There's 2 buttons. There's a D-pad. There's a start and a select, and that's it. The console itself looks like a VHS player. It doesn't not look like a video game system. I think this is before like the aesthetic around gaming. Like this is like watching the first music videos where they're like, what do we do with this new format? Even though there had been gaming systems before this, and actually like the very first Nintendo system has just this nice like pill in the middle of it. It's like, it's got like 5 games preloaded, and it's just like this little like orange extruded pill with a pill shape on the top of it. But the NES and I guess in Japan it was the Super Famicom.
So this,
or no,
this
it was
released
the
in the
Famicom.
80s.
This is 80s.
Okay.
Yeah, and I guess there's the American one, and then there's also the Japanese one.
Japanese ones looks wildly different. It's red for one. The American one's just gray and black.
Yeah, and it's got gold accents.
Wow.
But yeah, I just like we had the NES. I have two older sisters.
Okay.
So we had the NES, and we had the controller, and then we also had the gun for Duck Hunt.
Oh yeah.
Great. I do love the story of like, so if I don't know if you know this, but Duck Hunt is on the same cartridge as the first Mario game, because they thought that it was like a throwaway game. Like they were like, these are two throwaway games. Like they're not worth.
So you're going to combine them together as like a package deal. Okay.
This is what I remember from like, my video game history learnings. And so, yeah, they put these together, and then like Super Mario ends up being wildly popular because Mario first showed up in Donkey Kong.
Okay. That's like
game.
A side character.
Well, yeah, because he's the one rescuing the princess from Donkey Kong.
Okay. Got it.
But then I think at that point he was just known as like Jumpman or something. But anyway, so like I just love that little tidbit. But I think like I came back to school with that controller because I was just like,
beautiful.
I don't know if I thought it was beautiful, but I think like I had this conversation with, there's this eccentric, I've talked about him before. There's this eccentric professor at Virginia Tech, Bill Green.
Okay.
And he has those videos on YouTube where he talks about like Braun clocks and
Okay.
stuff. But I remember him talking to me once, and he was like, it doesn't really have to be ergonomic. Like he just basically going against like,
Oh, I love that.
there was so much like human factors.
Get him on the pod right now.
Oh yeah. There was so much human factors teaching. And then like, you see a controller like this, and there's nothing about it that's like this. Maybe the distance between, are you turning my volume down?
Well,
am I blowing out the speakers?
No, I realized we've swapped mics. So we're a little bit.
So I'm going to be totally.
No,
just like,
I'll fix it in post. Don't worry about
okay.
this.
So I don't know if the spacing has been determined at all by like comfort, but then yeah, like perfect rectangle.
It's definitely not ergonomic for sure.
No. And so like that kind of fell in line with this thing that Bill Green was saying, was just like, not everything really needs to be like designed for the hand, like in such an explicit way. It just has to like work.
Well, here's an interesting critique or observation with this one specifically, because I don't know how long kids played with the NES, like as in terms of like game length, right? Like maybe they did. I mean, I think I remember as a kid playing video games, like could play all day long at some point, but with something as simple as Mario, did people play it and then play it again over and over? Sure. Maybe my point's mute, but my thought is that if you're not using it all day long, maybe it doesn't have to be as ergonomic.
The games weren't necessarily epic, but I mean, I think Super Mario is still a pretty lengthy game. The first Zelda game is pretty lengthy. But in terms of design, let's just talk about the design itself. I would say like this is maybe like third or fourth tier in terms of like an actual design. I think it has some iconic sort of moments. I think the controller is very iconic. I just think like as a system, as a designed object, like I don't think it's like, as compared to all the other consoles, it doesn't rank highly for me.
Yeah, I would say C tier for me.
Yeah. So I think we should move on to the next one, because then we have Super Nintendo.
You're not giving any love to the Sonys and the Xboxes.
Well, no, because they're not around yet.
Okay, sure,
I'm going generation to generation.
Okay, I'm ready.
So next generation is Super Nintendo and Sega Genesis.
Okay.
So Super Nintendo is far, far more playful. And I prefer the Japanese version, the Super Famicom, which is that one in the top left. I think that one is really nice. But the American version is the one with the purple.
Yeah.
The two different tones of purple That's actually like, yeah, that's like a re-release.
Oh, the
one.
minis.
Yeah,
they
those
did.
are the
They did a
minis.
mini PlayStation one too.
Yeah, but let's see. I think there it is. There's the full size right here. So, yeah, like the controller already
It's got curves on it now.
Yeah, it's like these. You've got basically two circles connected. I do like that it's not an exact pill.
Right. There's
It's
a little
like,
cut out the bottom.
yeah, there's sort of a little cutout, almost a notch in a way. But yeah, they use these purples in there, which I think is really interesting, given that like I think gaming at the time was probably pretty male dominated. Like, I don't know. I think these systems were intending to appeal to a family, and maybe in the next generation, it's where like this sort of idea of like being a male dominated like sort of consumer good comes in, where like the aesthetics become a lot more like
Aggressive.
But
Well,
yeah,
I think Nintendo's always been more family oriented.
yeah, and I think they are trying to appeal for sure to like a broader audience. I think the purples are nice. I like the like monochromatic, like the purples on the controller. It's weird because the Game Boy,
I had a Game Boy.
yeah,
Color.
but like the original Game Boy has like these sort of, is it like mauve or something? Like the color scheme is not
what is
uniform.
mauve? I need to study my colors, James.
I don't. It's like, or like maroon or something.
Is that a red?
Yeah, you'll see. So like,
Oh yeah, it's like a purple reddish color.
but it has this, as opposed to the Super Nintendo or the NES, the buttons on this one and the buttons on the Super Nintendo
Don't
are
match.
like, they're at this like, the cue is that they're at an angle from each other,
Right.
and I think that like there's something about ergonomics there.
Yeah, your thumb moves at an angle.
Yeah, that they're now considering, they're now thinking about.
That's a good observation there. I like that.
But back to the Super Nintendo, one detail that I think is really funny is like there's sort of this wavy pattern on the base. Like on the base of the system, there's
Interesting.
sort of this like wavy extrude.
Okay.
Didn't
realize that. Yeah,
it's just like
I see it.
another sort of like very playful addition to the system.
Interesting.
I think for this one, I think this is like, I still don't like love the design of this one.
Okay.
I think it's C tier.
C tier. Okay, I'm gonna go D tier on this guy.
D tier,
I think
lower than NES.
Yeah, I think the NES has a very kind of honest, straightforward approach of
Right.
being a box. This one was, let's try to throw some design elements on there, but it's a little bit haphazard of why and how.
I think the controller, on the other hand, is like, I think the controller is like B.
Okay, are you gonna do split screens on the
I mean-
controllers versus you're putting a lot of editing work into this video. That's all I'm saying.
But I think the controller is like more successful than the system itself.
Okay. I agree. The controller is nicer.
And then pop over to Sega Genesis. Sega Genesis is like the PlayStation of this era, where it is like trying to be more aggressive,
They probably had cooler games, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, they sort of had the more quote unquote mature games,
Right.
which is hilarious because like the system graphics and everything, like you weren't going to get really super graphic content or anything.
They have GTA.
Well, GTA, I guess GTA started on PlayStation,
Okay.
right?
I don't remember.
Like the original ones where you're just
Top down.
overhead.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there's almost like two versions of the Sega Genesis. I think
There's kind of two versions of almost every console, to be honest.
Yeah.
It feels like they do it and then they redo it, and then you come out with the next version.
right. It's almost like the iPhone SE sort of thing. But yeah, I think we had this one. Like that was the first one that we had. So this was the first system that was after NES.
I'm not gonna lie, James. Sega Genesis F tier. It looks like a video game console from Wish.com, you know? I don't like this at all. It's just black.
You don't
and
like it? I
amorphous
mean,
and just I don't know.
wait, can you go up to the one that I said
Yeah.
is the one I had? I think it's decent. Like I think it's still like C tier. I don't think it's like it's anything remarkable. The controller, like everything is trying to get at this more sort of like aggressive, mature kind of vibe versus that the Super Nintendo. Like they are literally trying to be as drastically dissimilar as possible.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Nintendo, which is like light gray, purple, and Sega Genesis, which is like totally black.
Right.
And I mean, I loved the Genesis. I loved all the Sonic games and everything. Like, I also played like a ton of Street Fighter on Genesis. But like, I think they had like the 6-button controller.
Oh,
which,
6 buttons.
Which was like great for fighting games because, you know, it
You
was
can mash more buttons at the same time.
Yeah, it was like,
even though you have no clue how to control it, you just mash as many buttons. I remember that.
But yeah, I don't know. Genesis, it felt like, I mean, I don't know if you remember the commercials, probably not because you were way too young, but like the commercials would literally be like, the end of it would be like Sega, like it was just all about being in your face. But still, yeah, I think design wise, like the whole industry is not quite there yet.
Right.
But I think the next generation is the generation.
All right.
Which is PlayStation 1.
There we go. Now we get to some my
N64 and Sega Saturn. Although Sega Saturn is like a total snooze fest. I had one because obviously we were a Sega family for a little bit, but the Sega Saturn is like nothing to write home about. The games were pretty good, but the system itself is like so boring. I think PlayStation 1.
Wait, can I give this one the critique?
Okay, go ahead.
So this is my first one. So
sorry, I just got so excited about this.
No, this is great. Wait, did you have a PlayStation or no?
Mm-mm.
Yeah, so we were a PlayStation family. I remember, this is funny because I remember my dad getting the PlayStation, and I think we popped in. Actually, no, I think this is PlayStation 2. So maybe we'll save that story for the next round. But I will say, this is my first console. I loved it. I think I played a lot of like Tekken on it. I think also, did Metal Gear, was that on this one?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Metal Gear was like, yeah, and I was like, I don't know, probably should not have been playing Metal Gear when I was this young. But yeah, I think PlayStation has a similar kind of boxy aesthetic to the NES, but you have that very round, iconic shape on top of it where the CD goes.
Mm-hmm.
And you have the kind of round buttons as well, and it just kind of popped up, the lid popped up. You have an interesting controller on the PlayStation. You know, it's kind of this more handled controller, more ergonomic.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to separate your nostalgia from the design, but I think from a design perspective, I would give this one a good B tier.
I've actually thought about the PlayStation 1 a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I never had one. I had friends that had them. And I think at the time I was like, I had then switched to being a Nintendo boy and getting an N64. And so I was like all about cheering on Nintendo and N64. But in retrospect, I think PlayStation 1, I think for me that is an S. That's an S tier design. I think it's like totally iconic. I think I love sort of like the constellation of circles that are happening on the front. I think like when we're talking about this like optimistic, idealistic future, like this to me feels like an artifact from like a science fiction movie about like a future gaming system.
Okay.
Like it feels not so futuristic that it's like totally outlandish, but it still feels like it's pushing an aesthetic that like, I don't know where it comes from, but it feels like it comes from the future to me. And I love the controller. The controller feels like there's this very like rudimentary geometry, like it's calling back to the circles on the system. Mm-hmm. There's like the two circles, there's the connection between, and then there's a hard edge to then coming out as like the handles. So you read those circles and those edges before then you read the like the handle area.
It's
which
not
I
blobby.
think is,
You still get those circle callbacks.
yeah, I think it's really nice. And I think this system I see down here was one of the first ones to have like obviously the N64 also has the joysticks, but I think PlayStation came out before N64 because
I remember that.
pretty
It was a
sure
big thing. The analog joystick. Yeah.
I'm pretty sure the story is that Nintendo was developing this system with Sony. I don't remember what happened, but eventually Sony just decided to do it themselves rather than to like do it with Nintendo. And so like this was going to be a Nintendo system and ended up being a Sony system. But
it's like the
also
best of both worlds then.
Very first system to introduce CDs, as far as I know. I guess there was like Sega CD and things, but I mean, I remember just like PlayStation being a big deal with CDs. And I don't know if you remember this, but they had like the black, like the backs of the PlayStation discs were black. They weren't like the clear, shiny CDs. Yeah, I love the PlayStation ones as a design.
This is not a design thing, but I will call it out because I think it's a really interesting story. PlayStation 1 had the pretty popular game Crash Bandicoot, which I played a ton of. And I think it was one of the first games that really pushed the graphics of the industry.
Yeah.
Of course, you look back now and it's like crazy. It's like trash. But
this is Trash Bandicoot.
Trash Bandicoot. There's a whole documentary on it, but it's interesting how the developers used the hardware in the PlayStation 1 and pushed it to its utmost limits, so much so that they had to essentially make the design of Crash Bandicoot a triangle in order to push the rest of the game forward. And that's why Crash Bandicoot is this triangular shape.
Oh, interesting.
There's a great documentary. I'm sure if you just look it up, like Crash Bandicoot documentary, you can find it.
Yeah.
I think I'll bump my PlayStation 1 up to A tier.
Okay, cool. I think actually out of all the systems, I think it's one of the older ones that still holds up. And then there's Nintendo 64, which like I still have affinity for. I think it is interesting that like N64 and PlayStation have these dramatically different aesthetics.
This one has the crazy controller, the 3-prong controller,
the Trident.
Yeah,
I love this controller. It's so bizarre and so weird. I feel like, whereas PlayStation is drawing from sort of this very like minimalist sort of aesthetic. And also I love the PlayStation, like the icons for the buttons.
Triangle.
Yeah.
X, square,
Instead
circle.
of doing like the A, B,
letters.
C. But the Trident, I just love the fact that like you can sit your hand, because like nobody ever used the D-pad. I don't know what the D-pad was even for on the N64 controller, but sitting your hand in between the like sort of Trident for the tine
Just,
for the
it hugs your hand.
It does hug your hand, and you can sort of like hold it loosely in there. It introduced the like trigger, the Z on the back, but like I feel like the Nintendo 64, the aesthetic is sort of this like, I've been trying to define, and maybe there's already a term for this, but there's this sort of like early 2000s aesthetic that I call like liquid mercury or something.
It's got a kind of swoosh, a little wave going on there.
Yeah, it does have this very like liquid like aesthetic. Right. Feels kind of futuristic, feels more dated now than the PlayStation, I would say. But like, I would say, I don't know. Oh, also N64 first system to have 4 controller ports. Like, so, multiplayer was
games.
like huge for N64.
Smash Brothers,
right. Mario Kart, GoldenEye.
Yeah.
And I just like, I don't know. I think in terms of design, I think maybe I would put this maybe B, C tier.
I think
like somewhere in between.
I really think I would put this C tier, but I want to say the controller bumps it up to B. So that's where I land on.
Yeah,
on
I
this
mean,
Super
if
Nintendo 64.
nothing else, how weird that controller is definitely like makes it iconic.
Yeah.
And so the next generation is
We're getting into some clear stuff now.
Oh
We
yeah,
got clear plastic.
clear plastic on this, and the Game Boy Color, and then
Yeah.
the Game Boy Advance also had clear plastic. I don't think we should get into the handhelds
Okay.
because that's just going to be a whole
No,
other.
I was going to put Game Boy Color S tier.
Okay,
But we don't have to talk about it.
we S tier Game Boy Advance. What would you put it?
Honestly, there are so many amazing Game Boys. It's so tough to really rank them all.
Yeah.
I also remember the flip one.
Oh,
the flip one.
that one
Maybe
I think
that's
is
S tier.
S.
I never had one. I only had the color, but like
I had for a while. My grandmother was so into Game Boys that like almost every time a new Game Boy came out, I would get a new Game Boy because she would also get.
Oh, that's
I feel like
hilarious.
she got herself a
what
new
is
Game
what
Boy.
would she play? That's
She
funny.
played like Dr. Mario, I feel like,
Okay.
or Tetris or something. But yeah, the next generation of consoles is you've got GameCube, PS2, and Xbox. And Dreamcast.
Oh, James, don't
The
pull. You're always pulling the Sega in here.
Short-lived Dreamcast.
Put all the Sega in S
Listen,
tier.
you've gotta mention
All right, just
Dreamcast
kidding.
because Dreamcast was the first of this lineup to come out. Totally wild aesthetic.
I don't know what it looks like. Okay, now I remember.
The aesthetic of the Dreamcast is
okay.
like the current aesthetic of Lexus. Like it's
It's
like
got a triangle shape. Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
That's crazy.
It's just it's like very sharp.
Very
I remember
pointy.
seeing the controller and being like, whoa, like that. It was.
This seems like something that I feel like if I had a brother, I would have hurt him with this thing. We would have gotten in a fight.
But it
And blood would have been spilled.
I've like watched the wonderful thing about YouTube and the passionate people on YouTube is that there's like so many documentaries about just like like creator made documentaries about like game systems and their histories.
Yeah.
But Dreamcast was like way ahead of its time and just kind of like just didn't make it. I forget all the reasons why it didn't end up making it.
It has a window on the controller? Did you had this one or no?
I did not have this one. I had a friend. Did you have one of those friends that like literally their family was just like early adopters, like they would just have the latest and greatest of everything, so I had a friend who had this and yeah, I did love it. There were a lot of great games for it, but it just like this was Sega's last hurrah,
Yeah.
and now Sega makes games for other consoles.
It is interesting about the Dreamcast how it almost feels like it has all three platonic shapes, or all three. It just has triangle, circle, square. And that's pretty much the only shapes that are used in this design. It's not even like they said, oh, let's do a rectangle or an oval. It's like only circles, only squares, only triangles.
Yeah, that is interesting. I never read it that way before.
I'm going to bump this one up. I'll give this one a D.
A D? You said F originally?
Yeah. What did I put the other Sega one in F. I think I'll put this one in D.
For me, there is like a lot of, I don't know, a lot of nostalgia. I think like a lot of sadness around like Sega as a company, just like this being their last hurrah. And it felt like such a blaze of glory. I feel like Dreamcast is like a C for me.
Okay.
But now you have GameCube up.
Look at this bad boy.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, we love a good cube. It's not actually a cube, but
I know. I was thinking about it. It is like, aside from, there's one detail. Well, there's two details that break it out of the cube. Obviously, there's the handle on the back, but also the front where the controllers port in. It kind of arcs outward, so it like breaks out of the cube. I don't know for what reason, other than like maybe they're like it feels too serious if it's a complete cube.
Interesting, yeah.
And so let's add this little bit of softness to the front,
Right.
where it's like
little more
where
inviting.
you're engaging the
Yeah.
user.
Again, you got 4 ports.
Yeah.
GameCube was big on that, just like, or Nintendo's big on that. Again, family oriented.
Yeah.
Not a big fan of this controller though. This controller has kind of some weird shapes going on.
Yeah, the controller's a little weird. I have heard people say that they think that this is like the ultimate controller of the controllers, and I think a lot of them are like, I don't know exactly why that is. I don't know if it's the button layout. I don't know if it's the ergonomics. But yeah, I do remember seeing this one, and it's not as opposed to the N64. I feel like that one's weird and welcoming. This one just kind of feels like it just kind of feels weird.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of tension between those two kind of bottom circular bits where it's like almost touching and not really, and then you get this gap in between it.
Those testicles should be touching.
It definitely has some unsettling vibes to it.
But the system itself is
the cube
is pretty nice.
I wonder if it's actually it's a
think
cube from
what,
the top?
90 degrees?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, you know how it kind of reminds me of the next
Mm-hmm.
computer, right? Where Steve is like, actually, it's 1 millimeter shorter on the back, so it looks like a cube, or 1 millimeter longer. So it visually looks like a cube, but it's not actually a cube.
So you're wondering if there's like visual trickery here to make it look more cube-like?
I mean, it's definitely not tall enough to be a cube, but from a depth perspective, I'm not sure.
I'm gonna have to take a look at it. My
post.
Allison has a GameCube at home, so I'll
Get
have
the
to
calipers out.
Yeah, but
Where are we ranking this one, James?
I think, I mean, system alone, I think I'm gonna say B
Okay.
tier.
I'm going to say I think the cube is S, but I think the controller brings it down to A. I think as a whole, it's an A tier.
Yeah, I could agree with that. I could see it as an A tier. And then PlayStation 2, or do you want to talk about Xbox? Xbox is FFF, the first Xbox. I mean, I think
I don't remember what it looks like.
it's
this one.
awful.
Right, it's a giant X.
I mean, gosh. Well, now that I'm looking at it, it does almost feel like you could make that red and put a Supreme on it. Like there's something sort of like hype beastie about it, that it's like this huge. That controller though is one of the worst controllers ever developed.
Would agree. I don't like.
I
that.
remember just holding on to that thing and being like, this stinks.
It's like. It feels like the PlayStation 1 controller has been eating too many potato chips and just got really fat.
The system now, looking at it, I actually think it's kind of cool. Like, I was just thinking about it in my mind and remember seeing it and being like, that kind of stinks. I do remember also that it's very big.
Yeah.
It's a very big system, but just looking at it on the screen.
So the Xbox came out with the was it Xbox versus PlayStation 1 or is it Xbox versus PlayStation
2?
Okay.
I'm pretty sure. And so that's where, you get like Halo, first Halo game.
Wasn't a big Xbox fan.
Yeah.
We were a PlayStation family. And yeah, I don't know. I'm not a big fan of this aesthetic either. It's a giant X. I mean, the grilling on the side is nice. I mean, once we get into PlayStation 2, I can talk about that. But I don't know. I give Xbox, it's a C, but the controller brings it down to a D. So
I am actually going to give the console itself a B. Because I do kind of like, they're trying to make this huge statement. They're a new company entering into the console wars. So I think like the console itself makes that statement successfully. I think the controller is just like, what have you done?
Yeah.
So, yeah. But now we got to talk about PlayStation 2. How are we on time? I feel like we're gonna go on forever.
Well, it's okay. I feel like we've probably whoever's listening now are intently listening. Whoever is not listening is like left long ago.
Yeah.
I'm ready for this one. This was my heyday of gaming. This was the console I used. PlayStation 2, baby. And it's so monolithic. It reminds me of Space Odyssey 2001. and you get the grilling on the front. And I love how the grill has the buttons and everything integrated with it. So you have kind of this CD tray that pops out of the grill, and when everything is closed, it's just this kind of uninterrupted grill. You know, you get these uninterrupted lines on the side, and I think it's just so clean and nice.
Yeah.
I'm going S tier.
For me,
but I'm sure my nostalgia's kicking in there. So.
Yeah, I think for me it's a B tier.
Okay.
I think like I like everything you said about it. I agree with everything you said about it. I like that sort of holistic approach to the design where everything feels integrated into like sort of this detailing on the side. But in general, as like a game system, as something that's like I'm like seeing sitting there and like wanting to play, wanting to use, like it doesn't really draw me in the same way as some of the other systems. I think like PlayStation 1 does that, but PlayStation 2 feels a little bit too austere or something.
Serious, yeah.
So, but you know, we weren't a PlayStation family. I do like the stand, like that sort of like dark blue, like whatever, like that aqua blue or whatever it is, like purplish.
I don't remember this.
Kind of nice.
I don't remember the stand per se, but I do remember that you could place it vertically, and the little logo you could flip 90 degrees.
Oh.
You know, so you could have it on its side and the logo's, you know, correct way, and then you flip it vertical and then you could twist the logo.
Yeah. But and then the controller is great. The controller is basically like, it looks like whatever the second gen PlayStation controller was, where you have, you know, you've got the joysticks.
They didn't change it too much. I'm sure they updated the surfacing a bit, but
I think like, I think it's a B for me.
I also do want to give a call back because I think this was a inspiration into Control Labs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
We looked at gaming as kind of an inspiration for that product because it was partly aimed at gaming.
Yeah, and gaming
and development.
Gaming was like, especially in the VR world, has been used. At least the control schemes have been used as like a foundation for like how you're going to get adoption, because I think, you know, VR did seem to target gamers first. But I think like one of the things that we were thinking about with that sort of like using that sort of pattern around the outside edges of the Control Labs hub was that like even in VR you could sort of feel like it could sort of guide your thumb to the button
with the grill, the grooves,
because it was a dev kit, which is why it had a button. Like obviously like the whole idea around Control Labs is to eventually be in sort of like buttons. A buttonless universe, but like they added buttons there for developers to, you know, for them to use. What's next generation?
I don't
Xbox
know
360.
after this. Okay.
Xbox 360 I think is for me an S tier. I think like the controller, I remember
controller's great.
That's not so that there's like two different Xbox 360s. The one that I remember playing a lot was like the white one. That one.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. It's still...
this is the era of like they release one and then they update it again.
Yeah.
Right.
So I think like the first Xbox 360 does still have that sort of like liquid mercury almost vibe to it.
Right.
But that I do remember like before being a designer having that, like I didn't have one, but my friend had one. And I remember the controller being like sort of in awe of the controller.
And this was done by Astro Studio, right?
I think so. I think also Minimal might have done something for the Xbox for like the second iteration of it, but I don't know.
The white one, you know, because it's the classic box shape, but you have that subtle swooping on the sides.
Yeah,
which I think is still telling the story of the X kind of idea of like, oh, there's still that motion there, but it's not as literal as the first one.
Yeah.
So I gotta give props to that Xbox, because I get, what's Xbox 2? Is that what it is?
Xbox 360.
360. Sorry.
Yeah. The Xbox naming conventions are very strange.
Yeah. Do we get Xbox 720? What happened?
Well, no, there goes 360 to Xbox One.
Oh, that's right.
But I do.
I'm gonna put it in A tier though.
Yeah, but I do think that the first one was done by Astro, the 360.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that one. But like that controller to me was just like, it was so comfortable. I loved the feel of it. It had just like such a great look and feel to it.
Mm-hmm.
I think like they're using clear, but they're using it on the buttons and doing this like layered effect.
There's a
of the lettering.
A lot of good CMF for sure.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so like there's something really elevated about this. To me, it feels like that first PlayStation of like this inviting future sort of vibe. And yeah,
I think the white helps with that too.
I definitely, for me, this is an S tier. I just think like all around it was such a great console design. And then PlayStation 3, I think might be an F tier for me.
Let me look. This is like the clamshell looking one, right?
It's yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty much just curve on the top, curve on the bottom.
Yeah, the one I remember is like the super glossy,
the shiny one.
Yeah, that one. I think that was the launch one. This other one in the matte is not so bad, but that gloss one I think is rough. Like, I think that's
I feel like there is this very big surface on top, and making it glossy with the logo there is, and then there's like some breaks there that it's almost like they didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
It's like there's a big surface, let's see what we can do with it. Whereas opposed to kind of the PlayStation 2, you had the big flat surface on one side and you kind of kept it as is, kept it monolithic.
It doesn't feel like there's any sort of underlying like aspiration to like what the design is, or just like an underlying theme. It just sort of feels lost.
I think I'm going to have to agree with you on this one. As much as I'm a PlayStation guy, actually I never had this console, but
yeah,
I think design-wise it goes an F.
Yeah, it's pretty bad. And then Nintendo Wii.
Wait, what about the Wii U?
No, Wii U is after the Wii.
Okay.
Now, this was when because I skipped the GameCube, PlayStation 2, Xbox era, and
right.
I went straight to the Wii.
Okay.
And I camped out at a Walmart
overnight.
Because first of all, I had taken a year off after high school, so this was during that time, and I honestly had nothing better to do at that specific time during the year.
Okay.
And so I decided, like, I'm just going to go do this. I'm just going to go camp out. I was a huge Zelda fan. I was like really eager to play the new Zelda game. And so I camped out with a bunch of people overnight. I'll never forget this. And we had decided, it was really cold. I forget what time of year it was. Really cold outside. We had decided to like write our names down on a list. Like we had all agreed. We had like a constitutional convention.
With the line.
Yeah. And we just decided like, okay, you're in this order, you're here, you're here, you're here. And so we all were taking turns going back to our cars and like warming up.
Okay.
And I, at the time I had a Jeep Wrangler.
Okay.
And so like, you know, we're doing that. Everything's working out great. The store opens, like, I get inside, get my Wii. I'm on my way back to my car. It's like, I don't know, like 8 o'clock in the morning, 7 o'clock in the morning. And I had gotten, like, my muscle memory for the Jeep was like open car door, and it didn't have like a button. Like I didn't have like a clicker lock.
Okay.
It had like a manual lock.
Okay. So, you have
so
to lock it every
my
time.
muscle memory is just like open door, hit lock button, close door.
Right.
I get to my car and my car is locked
Oh no.
and my keys are inside the car.
Oh no.
And so like I had
And
to
it's
call
cold, it's
I had to
freezing.
call my sister to come and get me to like bring an extra set of keys. But got home, set up the Wii, and I will say like gameplay wise, like a very impressive execution on this concept, because
Right.
I was still kind of skeptical, but all the reports around it was like, this is actually like really great.
It was fun. It was a very fun thing to play.
Like
for
playing Zelda on this thing, I was just like one of the best, like some of the most fun like gaming I'd ever done.
I mean, Nintendo has always kind of pushed the boundaries of like game mechanics and like how you interact with it.
Yeah.
And definitely with the Wii, with all the motion going on. I mean, I remember going over and playing with my friend had one, and
Yeah.
it was a lot of fun. It was definitely a very different experience than a traditional console game.
Yeah.
But
It definitely felt like Nintendo was saying, we're not competing with
Right.
PlayStation and Xbox. We're in a league of our own.
Yeah.
Like we're doing something different.
which is definitely worth applauding
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, and something that we didn't mention about the GameCube, like the GameCube is a small system. One of the reasons that it's so small is because they decided to go with this mini disc format rather than like PlayStation and Xbox had like regular sized discs and also had like DVD players with like PlayStation 2, Xbox 360. GameCube is like not going that way, and people at the time were like, what are you doing? But like I think the Wii sort of makes it clear, like they're about gaming, pure and simple. Like
Right.
we're gonna just like work on the mechanics of gaming and like how to appeal to like sort of a broader audience than sort of PlayStation and Xbox, which is like starting to appeal solely to like gamers.
Right.
But yeah, I just remember having like tons of fun with the
Aesthetically,
family. Aesthetically, not great.
not great. Not great.
I mean, the controllers, like the controller for the Wii kind of looks like a remote control
Yeah.
for your TV.
It's vertical. It's
But
different
It
setup.
was a very comfortable controller. That, and I love the like the nunchuck attachment, which had like the joystick on it. But yeah, in terms of like, it's again like sort of maybe too austere. Like the system itself just doesn't feel very welcoming.
It tried to be a monolith, but it's not a monolith.
Yeah.
And
And
it's also
it has
not.
an-
It doesn't fit the vibe either.
Yeah, the stand gives it like this angle
Yeah.
to it, which I don't know why. Like, why not just make it like, is that the playful aspect?
Maybe.
And also like maybe usability, like walking up to it, it's like at an angle rather than straight on. But yeah, not the best.
I'll put this one in C.
Yeah, I would say C as well. And then the Wii U
Was
is sort of
a
like
weird stepchild.
very weird. I think what they were trying to do was basically make a large size Nintendo DS to have like the dual screen thing, but you have a screen on your controller and then your TV screen. But I mean, in terms of design, I think it's like decent, but it's like, it's almost not a system. Like it does feel like this weird in between, because I don't remember there being like specific games for the Wii U that were significant. But I don't know, like the design itself is not terrible, but it is like after this amazing, like doing the Wii,
Right.
then they do the Wii U, and it feels like a successful experiment followed by a failed experiment, but at least they're still experimenting. But then
What else we got?
we've got the next round of Xbox, which is, I think it's the Xbox One.
Now some of these, I mean, I feel like now in the modern era, we're getting kind of, we could do like rapid fire rounds here.
Yeah. At this point, I think the controller, again, like the controllers on the Xbox, I think are like the best.
Yeah. They've taken the crown as
Yeah.
controllers for sure.
And the system itself, I think it's A. I think it's,
Yeah,
it's
I'll give it A tier
minimal.
too.
I wonder if minimally minimal Andrew Kim, because he worked on, I'm pretty sure he worked on Xbox at Microsoft.
Okay. I can
I
see him doing this one.
I don't know if he was in a position to like call the shots at that point in his career, but it does feel pretty minimally minimal.
Yeah, I mean, I think at this point we're starting to get into like modern kind of design where things have matured to the point where okay, we all like a really simple box. Really, it's a simple kind of clean way to go. Fits with your decor. I mean, so that I think kind of fits in with that. And then do we also have the Xbox One S? Is that kind of in this era too?
Is there an S? Maybe the white one was the S. Oh, with the circle.
Or the one that's like a vertical one.
That's the next.
Oh, the X.
That's the next.
Okay. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Version.
We have PlayStation 4. Oh, wait, where do we put the Xbox? A tier?
I would put it A. Then there's PlayStation 4, which is like not. It's pretty nice, not offensive. I think like it sort of has this cut angle to the front of it, like I don't know how else you would describe it. It's like
I'm going S tier on this guy.
You're going S?
Well, I think here's my theory on this one, is this one the 3 stack is what the one I really like.
Oh yeah.
With the angle, again calling back to our Control Labs conversation, but I think it has this kind of minimal aesthetic that the Xbox was going for, where it's just super rectilinear and plain. But I love the extra detail of the stack and the angle, and I think it gives it just enough of character. And obviously it's a very kind of stark gamer aesthetic, but for what it's going for, I think it nails it.
Yeah, I think it's nice. I think it's like, for me, I think it's an A.
I think too, it's like as we've reached this point in mature game consoles, it's just kind of, it almost feels like the same point of your phone, where it's like, okay, we know what it's going to be. It's going to be a simple box, and it's hard to really strike up a really interesting design.
Totally.
But of course, we can still do it, as we've all seen with
PlayStation 5. Like one of the most controversial consoles of recent memory. And
I mean, I know I'm sure we had an episode on it already, but I gotta say the hump with the CD, it really brings it down a lot.
Yeah, the standard version without the CD, I think is like pretty successful. Mm-hmm. It does look like one of those. I feel like somebody posted it looked like some sort of
Wi-Fi router or fan. Yeah,
like I feel like
Dyson.
There's a fan that kind of looks like that. I think it's pretty interesting. I think there's some really cool details on it, like the pattern. There's like a
micro pattern
on it that's like the X, triangle, square, circle.
I believe that's on the controllers, right? Or is that on the console?
I think it's on the console. It might be on both.
Yeah, I will say that I like that micro pattern detail. I think that's a really...
And the controller itself is like, is kind of, it's interesting. It's like, I mean, all of it is very much making a statement.
It's like, very alien. This one feels very alien. This one kind of feels like, I don't know. It feels like what Xbox One should have been, in my opinion. Because it's got some swooshing things to it. It feels very like alien Xboxy. Xbox always felt alien to me. I don't know why.
Yeah.
But
it feels like some sort of like teleportation device or something. Like it does.
Did I say Xbox One? I think I meant original.
The original Xbox. Yeah. That's the Xbox.
Rest in peace, Xbox.
Is like, geez. But yeah, no, there's like, I don't know. There's something about it. I don't love the aesthetic. I think for me, it's like a B in that I appreciate what they were trying to do,
right,
and like what they were going for. I think the controller is like very interesting, but I think overall, would I love to look at that every day? Not really.
Yeah. It's also very large.
Yeah.
I'm going to go C on this guy.
Yeah. And then,
what else we got?
And then
There's another
Xbox.
Gosh, Xbox, get your naming right. We can't even Google it.
Series X.
This is what I was thinking of. The big vertical box.
Yeah.
Which is, it feels like a refrigerator. I gotta say, I love this one. I love the pattern on top. Well, it's just a monolith, and then you have this perfect hole pattern on top with the green undertone. So when you look at it at an angle, you see green glowing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think it's just beautiful. I'm put this one up on the S.
I don't like this one. I think for me, it's like a C tier, maybe even a D. I do love that detail on the top. Right. I think proportionally, it feels like, I mean, maybe because the convention of gaming systems is sort of like these rectangle proportions, and here they're going for this square extrusion. But I think the Series S, I think that's an S tier.
Right.
For
so
me.
that one is the one with the white and then the black circle.
Is that one feels like modern art. Like
I'll put that one in S tier too.
I feel like that one on its side, sort of like facing toward you with that black circle in the middle of the white rectangle face. Like, I think that's a beautiful little piece of like home decor as well as a system.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like the extrude square of the X, like that's something that I just kind of want to like have off to the side. Like, I don't want to present it really.
Okay.
I just like want to have it kind of hidden. I think the detail on the S makes it more home decor somehow.
I think you convinced me. I'll knock my big black box down to A tier. I think the box part of it, I think maybe you're right. Like, it is a little bit too bulky, but I really love that whole detail at the top. So that's why it's so far up there.
Yeah. It's cool. The whole detail is very cool.
And yeah, the white one with the black circle, I was also going to say A tier, but I like your analogy of modern art, so I'll bump it up to S.
Nice. And then finally, the Nintendo Switch.
Oh yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So I mean, the Nintendo Switch, I feel
like that's like the culmination of all the past Nintendo's put into one,
And so like, yes, the Switch, I feel like they took what didn't work on the Wii U,
right?
And this is like what the Wii U should have been.
Yeah.
I think like it's hard because there's so many elements to this design. There's the dock, there's the tablet, then there's the controllers, then there's like the add-ons to the controllers to either make it like one continuous controller or like the two separate sort of nunchuck controllers.
Right.
It's a very modular system. I think we've talked about this in previous podcasts. The funniest thing about the Switch to me is that like it is like everybody had somebody in their class, or maybe they did it themselves, that had this exact same idea in college.
Yeah.
Like, and it's just like, that's such a, like, I remember people having it and being like, that's so ridiculous. Like, why would you have like a one-off thing that? Yeah. But I think because it's Nintendo and because they're also creating the gaming software, like they're doing this beautiful marriage of like this really unique functionality with like for like the system where they're designing the games and the gameplay to work beautifully with the hardware. So it's just like that whole experience makes this concept worthwhile. Yeah. Like otherwise, if somebody random person came out with this concept, you'd just be like, who cares? Like,
yeah, they have all the legacy and all the trial and error to achieve this and do it successfully.
Yeah. I think it's a very cute system.
Design-wise, yeah, that's an interesting question.
But design-wise, I think the functionality is really interesting. I think all the bits and bobs, like maybe it's a B, but honestly, like I don't necessarily love the aesthetic of this. I think the dock, especially, like if you have one, it feels very cheap. It feels like an afterthought to the system.
Logo's kind of big.
Yeah, it's just like not. It's not great. I think the controllers are nice, although like with my gargantuan hands, like I get arthritis if I play this for too long. So I need to get some like goofy silicone
Oh, you got
like,
add-ons to your controllers?
I'm gonna need to. But like I think the controller, and I like the little. There's something very playful and cute about when it's all in this, like slid into that single controller sort of unit.
Yeah.
Where it kind of looks like a dog or something. Like
It reminds me of Neapolitan ice cream. You got
red
on one side, blue on the other.
But the DS, I think it's the Switch. Is it the Switch Lite? That one's nice. It's just like one continuous system without controllers that you can pull out. So basically, like Nintendo's no longer making like the Nintendo DS systems or any sort of Game Boy systems. This is essentially just like they always owned the mobile market, and now they've just consolidated into one system.
Yeah, it makes sense. I feel like because there probably was a bifurcation because of just power constraints, and now that you can pack a powerful microchip in anything now, it's like, why not make it all in one?
Yeah.
Yeah, design-wise, I mean, I think concept-wise, it feels like everything led up to this beautiful concept of it's this portable, but also, home gaming system, and it also has the whole family element too. You can slide the controllers around. Concept-wise, I gotta say S tier. Aesthetically, I think it brings it down to B. I think that's where I'm at too.
Yeah, I think actually the Lite, being that it's not modular, it kind of makes it a better aesthetic to me.
Right.
Because it feels more holistic.
Yeah.
Like even just like the coloring, I don't love the blue and red and like the colors that were chosen for the system. And even the gray one just kind of looks drab. Like there's not really, I don't think the color choices on it were that elegant. Oh yeah, now there's like sort of the LCD version, which is white, which is kind of nice, but because it's modular, I feel like it's very hard to make a modular system like feel cohesive. And
yeah, especially in tech. I mean, obviously there's all kinds of different
but yeah, so
that was a long episode, but it was a fun one. I enjoyed this one.
Yeah.
I hope we still have people listening. Very niche topic. Let's listen to industrial designers and gaming consoles.
Yeah,
you got to like both of those things to listen to this episode.
Yeah. But I don't know. It's interesting because I don't know where consoles are going from here. Because I just don't know where Nintendo's going to go next. I don't know. I
mean, it feels like gaming on PC is probably on the rise. It'd be interesting to look at actual stats of that.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because we were talking before the podcast.
We got VR coming into the scene.
We both had the experience of skipping a generation of consoles because we were probably computer gaming at that point.
Yeah.
Because I was I had an iMac and I was playing Diablo 2 very happily. Did not need a system.
Right. Roko's Tycoon, Minecraft for me.
Yeah. So I wonder what the next generation will be. It feels like, do you remember that system that Yves Bahar, Fuse Project, worked on that was sort of like a flop, but it was like that Oya thing?
I don't remember that one.
You don't remember that?
Oh, we also didn't talk about the GameSphere.
GameSphere?
Yeah, you don't know the GameSphere, James?
Do I not remember? Let me see it.
The GameSphere.
No, what is this?
This is a callback to Drake and Josh episode. I don't know if you remember this one. It's just a classic. Gotta say, GameSphere put that thing right up into S tier. All right, used to be hard one.
Oh yeah, there's a OUYA. It was I think OUYA. There it is.
Oh, interesting. Never seen this. Was it a concept?
So it got, I think it was a Kickstarter thing, and I don't remember what ended up happening. I think they did ship some units. I think there was criticism that the controller was awful, but the whole premise of the system was more of I think it was a streaming console.
Streaming games. Yeah.
Because it does.
Oh, it's very small.
It
looks
is
really
starting
small.
to feel like, do we really need the consoles to be so big anymore? Because like a lot of this content, either like on the Switch, you can, on most systems, you can download games.
Right.
Like, does it really need to be this huge thing, or could it be much smaller? And then it's all about like the control system.
Yeah.
And then of course, like the VR element, it's still hard to say like how much. I think gamers probably would be open to adopting VR, but I think that there's still this love of like controller, television screen. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, it does feel like VR is probably the next step, but it also feels like why have such a big console anymore? Is that necessary, or could it just be about the control scheme?
Yeah, you're making the industrial designers cry over here, James. Just like, we want a nice object in our home, even if it's useless.
It could still be like there still needs to be something.
Yeah.
And like, could it be something that's like even more blended into an environment, or like just like a small puck, like, it could be whatever, but I'm just very interested to see where gaming goes from here. But at the same time, I was talking about DK Oldies on, or did I talk about that on like one of the other episodes?
I don't know what DK Oldies is, James.
DK Oldies is this Instagram page that I'm in love with right now.
Oh, okay. You have not talked about this.
It's like a retro gaming store, and they post like 3 videos a day. They have like, I shouted them out on my own story as being like, I think they're one of the best social teams right now of just like quality Instagram content.
Yeah, it's definitely like eye candy, nostalgia candy for sure.
And so they like, a lot of what they do is, I mean, they sell retro games and systems. They also repair retro systems. Like, I didn't know that all the Game Boy games had batteries in them.
Button batteries to keep the game saved.
I guess so.
Yeah,
and so like, they'll show themselves like repairing systems.
You must not have had a clear cartridge, James.
I did, but I was not inquisitive enough to be like, oh, what's that battery doing? But yeah, it seems like there's still this big market for like retro games and retro systems.
James, I forgot one thing.
What?
We got to put the Game Boy Color camera S tier and printer. Just shout that out.
Well, I think there's like original Game Boy had a camera and printer as well.
Oh, I had that. It was like the best thing ever.
You took pictures, and what were you taking pictures of?
I don't know, just Legos and making silly faces.
Yeah,
it was just perfect. It was just the perfect thing. Just such a cool
Game Boy and the like handheld consoles, that's like a whole other topic.
Stay tuned for next week.
I do remember the Game Boy just being like, when I had a Game Boy, and then when the Game Boy Pocket came out, just being like blown away at how small and slim it was.
Yeah.
And then the Game Boy Color, like, I don't know. I mean, obviously Nintendo owned that market. I guess PlayStation got into it with the PSPs.
Yeah.
Which I never
had one of those.
Never had one of those, but all that stuff. But it is interesting that like, even though like these systems are long gone, like there's still a market and a craving for like old electronics, because like
it's tactile, it's like nostalgic. I don't know, there is something to it. And I even think Teenage Engineering with the new Playdate or Panic, made by Panic, it kind of hints at that of like, let's bring this tactileness back. I mean, also you have Kano on the MP3 player side of things, bringing back music players, and they've teased some projectors and stuff. So it's like, it's interesting. Are we in an age of resurgence of tactile tech?
Yeah,
I mean, that would be a beautiful thing,
Yeah, I mean, that's cool. And I think like also I feel like the gameplay, there's still so many, like there's indie companies that are making games to try and like emulate the look and feel of the retro aesthetic.
Yeah.
Because like, regardless of where like like graphics are at this point, like, you know, how realistic things have gotten, there's still like, if the gameplay is inherently solid, then it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Like, it's still going to be fun. Although it's hard sometimes to play. I feel like it's especially hard to play like old N64 and like PlayStation 1 games, because like you're getting into 3D and it's just like so bad. Whereas like if you play like Genesis or Super Nintendo games, like it's still those like 8-bit graphics that like they're like their own art form at this point.
Right.
Like
They didn't have to worry about doing 3D. They just had to focus on making a good game.
Yeah. And so like I think those games maybe hold up a little bit better, because like I don't have any strong affinity. I don't know who does for like low poly, like the like really bad like PlayStation 1 graphics.
I mean,
but
there's some cool ones.
There's probably some love out there for it. But anyway,
that's my vibe. That's my era.
That's but anyway,
cool, man.
Yeah,
good app. Maybe we'll do handheld ones at some point in the future.
I'm so glad
we'll have
got
to give us a rest here. That was a long episode.
That was a long episode.
But thanks for listening. As always, you know, I think we still want to do a full question episode. So if you have a question, send that in, and we'll compile them all together for one big episode at some point. And yeah, as always, I'm Nick.
I'm James.
Peace.
Later.